Good evening, you're watching CNN Money Switzerland. My name is Hannah Wise and these are your main news headlines this Wednesday. The coronavirus pandemic has caused consumer sentiment in Switzerland to sink to historic lows. The Department for Economic Affairs' latest monthly survey shows people are anticipating a severe recession, while expectations about their own financial security are at their worst since the 1990s. Meanwhile, the number of people who have tested positive for coronavirus here in Switzerland is now over 26,300. That's 260 more than the previous day, but it's down from 1,300 per day at its peak. 973 people have died, according to the Federal Public Office for Health. The European Commission is calling on member states to collaborate on easing coronavirus restrictions, but with different national responses to the outbreak, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen laid out a 14-page roadmap for countries in lifting restrictions across the bloc.
There does not exist one-size-fits-all approach, but it has to be a tailor-made approach in every individual member state. I want to make sure that this is not a signal that containment measures can be lifted as of now, but it intends to provide a frame for member states' decisions.
Meanwhile, it's been announced that the postponed 2020 Tour de France will go ahead this year, starting on the 29th of August. It comes after the French government extended a mass ban on gatherings to mid-July because of the coronavirus. Back here in Switzerland, exhibition company MCH Group said it was surprised by the defections of luxury watchmakers Rolex and Patek Philippe from its Baselworld event. This followed the cancellation, of course, of the event this year because of the coronavirus pandemic. Watch industry expert Alexander Lintz, though, has grave concerns about the future of the luxury shows.
I don't see how Baselworld can work, because you need those major companies, you need the superstars, you need those names, those bright names to attract a lot of people. So I don't see how this can work.
Sorry. Along those lines, though, isn't LVMH still in the game?
They could be. I have not heard anything from LVMH. I tried to reach out to get some information. They have not decided yet. But honestly speaking, I assume they will also pull out. And as you read in the statement coming from Patek Philippe, Rolex, Chanel, and Chopard, they are open for others to join. And so this could lead to a new format in Geneva that will also give LVMH the chance to attend. Maybe Breitling, maybe Georges Kern will also ask and knock at the door. You don't know. And so if they join together, they will make, let's say, the majority of big names. And then behind this scenario, there are still lots of smaller ones still in Basel. And what are they doing then? They are lost. They're completely lost. No one will come. And how does Baselworld fill up these this huge space? I don't know who could fill it up. I don't know.
Well, amid the COVID-19 outbreak, experts are warning of a supply chain bottleneck, which could result in huge shortages of essential medicines such as antibiotics. Roland Berger's Maurice Hosseini raises his concerns now with my colleague Ana Maria Montero.
It does keep me up at night, of course, and that's part of the reason why we initiated the study already 3 years ago and had an update last year. The essence of the topic is that antibiotics, even though they are an old class of medicine, are still probably the most important component of medicine, because they are our first defense against infectious diseases, and they could really harm people or even cause to death.
Are we facing a shortage of antibiotics?
Fortunately, at this moment, we do not have a shortage of antibiotics. But if we did, this would be really serious, and we really need to prevent that happening.
If we dig into the supply chain question, in a recent study, you said that there's a bottleneck happening that's coming from Asia. And it begs the question, are we too dependent globally on the Asian drug manufacturers?
Yeah, I think we are too dependent on that. And I think it's important to understand a bit the process, how this dependency unfolds. If you do produce pharmaceuticals, and in particular antibiotics, it's a three-step process. The first step, precursors of antibiotics are being produced. In the second step, you then take these precursors and do a chemical synthesis to create the actual pharmaceutical drug. And then finally, in the third step, you're making out of the drug, together with some so-called excipients, the final pill or capsule. Mm-hmm. So in this three-step process, what has happened is that the first step, the precursors, are really fully concentrated in just a few sites, predominantly in China, actually, unfortunately, also very highly in that province that was most affected by COVID. So this is the challenge. And if those plants are shut down for whatever reason, we may then trigger this whole shortage problem, because then the subsequent steps also cannot be performed.
Well, what about Europe? I mean, in the past, they were a bigger player. I mean, Germany was the pharmacy of the world at one point, wasn't it? I mean, is there a way to reclaim a bit some of this manufacturing that's been outsourced to Asia and other places?
The Western world, including Germany, there has always been a continuous price pressure on drugs, particularly generic drugs. So it became increasingly non-economical to produce a drug in the Western world, with other production standards, other loans, and so forth. So manufacturers were gradually forced to shut down their manufacturing sites here and source from China, because this made them competitive given the price pressure. And so it was a gradual process. There is still competence, obviously, that we could rebuild these sites and maybe reopen them. But under the current economic framework, the conditions that the framework sets, this is not going to happen. So this is why we're saying from the Roland Berger side, it needs now change from the regulations, change from the political end, to then trigger, hopefully, recapturing these parts of the value chain.
Now, many European countries have begun loosening their restrictions following the coronavirus outbreak, and Switzerland is no different. We're expected to hear more from the federal government this week on how we will scale back the restrictions here. However, when it comes to social distancing, that could be around for a lot longer. Here's CNN's John Lawrence reporting.
Social distancing may not be distant anytime soon.
If the virus is around in a few people and we aren't imposing control measures, it will resurge.
Researchers at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health say COVID-19 still poses a serious threat, and measures like stay-at-home orders and school closures may be needed intermittently until at least 2022.
If we could get a vaccine, that would be a total game changer. That's a long way off. That's probably almost certainly a year off.
Meanwhile, the White House looks toward restarting the economy.
The plans to reopen the country are close to being finalized.
Federal social distancing guidelines are scheduled to expire on May 1st, but Dr. Anthony Fauci, the top infectious disease expert in the nation, calls reopening the country then overly optimistic. And some governors from both parties say they're being cautious.
Let's not make the mistake of pulling the plug too early, as much as we all want to.
Which means at least some form of social distancing will likely be the new normal for a while longer.
It's pretty unlikely that there are going to be sports with spectators in the stands this fall and winter. I really hope to be wrong.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
Job postings here in Switzerland have dropped dramatically since the coronavirus lockdown was announced here in Switzerland back in March. Nicola Berth, the CEO of the Adecco Group in Switzerland, predicts that this could fall as much as 60%. Olivia Chang sat down with her and asked her which sectors will recover more quickly and how COVID-19 will have a lasting impact on our jobs market.
I personally believe that we will see first logistics to be impacted positively, while medical and IT staff will continue to be in demand. For automotive and sectors like catering, I do believe it will take much longer.
During this whole period of coronavirus, how do you think the pandemic has really reinvented the recruitment process, especially with so much of our activity now taking place online?
Yeah. I believe it's going to be a boost. The whole digitalization and, let's say, the adoption of not physical but virtual interviews is here to stay. I do believe, though, there's still going to be at one point in the whole recruitment process where people want to see each other, but much more of the whole process will be online going forward. So I do believe this is clearly something that we can take positive out of this pandemic.
From your point of view and your opinion, what do you think the Swiss job market is really going to look like after the coronavirus clears up? How optimistic are you?
This really depends on how long this crisis is going to last. If you believe that the crisis is through and we can go back to work and we can reopen the restaurants and shops within 2 to 3 months, I do believe that a recovery is possible towards the end of the year. Now, if this takes longer, then I do believe that the impact on the economy is going to have a much deeper and longer recovery time.
Artists here in Switzerland are bringing their art to you during this lockdown. A new online service has brought artists from across Switzerland together who are especially feeling the financial impact on their livelihoods. Tanya Koenig has their story.
Just like the closure of shops and restaurants is hurting the business community, the closure of galleries and shows is impacting artists. Q Artists in Isolation, an online initiative to help generate income and visibility for artists during self-isolation.
Artists like myself, we don't have great reserves. We don't have a pot of money that we can fall back on. You know, we're very much relying on the support we get from our gallery or from funding bodies, part-time jobs, which of course have been removed as well. So there's an uncertainty at the moment.
Claire Goodwin initiated the project and is one of 17 artists displaying on the site. The artists define the prices for their works themselves and get 70% of the sales. And even if they are accessing an audience, times are still tough.
Who's buying my work? It's people who have financial security and can invest and support culture, can support the artists across the field, dance, music, all the arts, the theatres. And I'm one of many people that rely on an audience with some finances. And if that's gone, or people holding their money, I'm quite worried, but I'm optimistic as well, because out of this problem, we found an opportunity where we, as makers and in this problem, we see it from inside. We can help a small amount of artists, but it's growing.
The creators of the site say it's not taking business away from galleries. Rather, the site is offering pieces that wouldn't usually be seen in a gallery, and in future will become an offline space, bringing audiences to actual artist studios.
So let's see the work in real. And I think not that it's not a problem, but at the moment, and also when we talk about people investing in artwork online, it's quite a tricky situation is for example, Art Basel being cancelled or other art fairs. You know, people love the social aspect. People love to go to Art Basel and have a glass of Prosecco or a beer, be invited to that party or that dinner. It's all about that. It's all, and also to spend a lot of money. People like to do it quite publicly, but in a private sense. So to actually remove that and have an online platform, it has its difficulties and its persuasion to the public to actually buy something. So that's something we have to kind of maintain, that, you know, we still have this audience. And I think people like to see the original. They want to see it and they want to be seen seeing it.
But for now, 2 exhibitions are online and the next one is being launched by the end of April. Tani König, CNN Money, Switzerland.
Now, Wimbledon is one of the very few events that had pandemic insurance, but it comes at quite a cost. Wimbledon paid around £1.5 million per year, and it will secure them a payout of an estimated £114 million, which will go some way in buffering the costs of this year's cancelled event. But before you think that, hang on a minute, your event could do with some of this, think again. Matt Layton sat down with a sports risk broker who explained that things are very complex when it comes to coronavirus and insurance.
We are in the same situation than after the Terrorism Act in 2001, September 11. After September 11, during 6, 7, or 8 years, it was more or less totally impossible to insure for cancellation the risk of terrorism. Now it's totally possible. So now, today, we are in the same situation with the contagious disease. It's impossible to find any capacity, but as a broker and all the specialists around the world will work in order to obtain this capacity, in order to increase the capacity, which is now at the level of 0. But in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I think we will be able to find a solution. You have to understand the fact that coronavirus will impact the insurance world, not only about cancellation, but about a lot of other specific branch, such as health, such as liabilities. A lot of other insurance policy will be impacted by this virus. And I am almost sure that for the moment, nobody knows what will be the impact in terms of million of money, but certainly a lot.
Well, that's it from us here at CNN Money Switzerland. Remember, all our coverage and our interviews in more detail are available on our website. Just head on over to cnnmoney.ch, and we'll be back tomorrow. See you then. Bye-bye.